The Yuman language family is ancient. Centered on the Colorado River Delta, it goes upstream, encompassing much of western Arizona, southern California, the U.S. state, and the entirety of the northern Baja Peninsula, as well as the Cochimi in the middle of the peninsula. To trace back the origins of the Yuman speakers and their shared heritage, we will now look at the most important way of preserving history and culture, a strong oral tradition in song and legend, and corroborating it with archaeological and anthropological evidence that can help paint a picture of the Yuman speaker migrations. That being said, the archaeological record cannot give us precise dates. However, it has been theorized that some of the Santiaguito and the Melangson Horizon, specifically the La Jolla complex / Encinitas tradition peoples, may have spoken Yuman languages based on the similarities in archaeological remains that begin to appear with the coastal Encinitas tradition and the Yuman speakers, such as the appearance of cremation. While not being concrete proof of them speaking Yuman, still might be proof they were in contact with one another. The Proto-Yumans were also associated with many of the late archaic desert groups, specifically that of the Pinto Amargoso tradition that appeared in 2000 BC. Linguistic evidence gives us some more clues. The Pacific coast of the northern Baja Peninsula is theorized to be the homeland of the Proto-Yuman language speakers 5,000 years ago. Due to the diversity of the language family in this region, and its proximity to its oldest branch, Cochimi, they then began to emigrate and diversify out of the Baja Peninsula to the Colorado River Delta in 4000 to 2000 BC. They split into three groups: River Yuman, Upland Yuman, or Pai, and Delta California Yuman. This is where a motif that is universal amongst the Yuman nations, cosmology, and oral tradition begins to appear: the water serpent. Analyzing one of the two main aspects of this motif, it is no surprise that water plays a key role in their beliefs. Originating from an arid region, water is also an important element in many other indigenous Californian groups, as put by Blackburn in 1975, quote, "a supernatural medium which can transform persons and objects from one ritual status to another," unquote. The Quechuans of the Colorado River Delta viewed their cosmos as one with four levels. The Metla'au soul continues to exist after death. At first it goes no great distance, remaining near its home, but dwelling a little above human beings. Then after progress through four different planes, it finally reaches the land of the dead, Amai Matapoi, dwelling of the dead, or Amaithik Kwasumpo, fourth layer dwelling, which lies far to the south of human territory. The afterworld is considered as an ameliorated earth. The four planes previously mentioned include the earth and the final destination. From the earth, Amut, the soul passes first to Ampot, dust. This level is very little above the earth and is named from the very fine dust which permeates it. There is no wind, and the dust which hangs in the air is finer than on earth. The third level, Asa, fog, lies farther south and still higher, and is enshrouded in fine mist from which it is named. In their traditions as well, water in its different states were seen as sacred, as was noted by one Yuman elder. The Kumeyaay also used the word Maisha for God, which translates to sky or high water. It is interesting to note the similarities with the Puebloan peoples also using water-related names for their gods. This similarity will be important later on in the film. Now, where does the sacred water serpent fit into this cosmology? This deity, named Mashai Awiti, he who lies in the sky, is universal to the cosmology of the Yuman speakers and appears in all of their oral histories, specifically in those of the river and delta branches. The only exceptions are the Maricopa and the Kiliwa, the latter of which have a completely different counterpart that was a hero who assumes the form of a snake. This water serpent deity, sometimes taking on the form of a medicine man, lived in the ocean and brought knowledge to the people, such as songs, dances, and rituals. When he is killed, sometimes at the peak of the sacred mountain of creation, Wikami, which in this paper is associated with Spirit Mountain in southern Nevada, all the knowledge sprouted forth from his head across all lands, each nation receiving their own morsel of knowledge. We look in further detail at four of these myths from different human tribes as was recorded. Maishawiti came. He had a head like a snake and a long body, very long, and he came through the air, resting himself on the tops of the mountains that bordered the river, making a white streak running from south to north, which can still be seen. The people were afraid, and one man threw a lighted brand on top of the ramada. The body burst open, and out came a fiery matter which flew through the air, and the people swallowed it. From this came all knowledge and power of song. Everyone who swallowed this matter knew at once how to sing and the meaning of all the songs and ceremonies. So the body burned until it was all consumed but the head, and this broke loose and rolled down to the river, where it can still be seen as the great cave in the rocks. Hidden under the ocean in the south was the great snake, Maihaushawit, which had been created by the gods. Mastamos said, "We should not allow Maihaushawit to return to his home. We must burn the house and his body so that you tribes will get the different songs from his body." Then they burned the house with the monster in it, and the songs issued from his body as spirit persons. Thus, the various tribes got their songs. Far in the south, in the ocean, in a house of hair, lived Humasera, an immense snake. He came northward, rattling with his tail, and making rain and thunder. His head was cut off, and he died. Therefore it is that medicine men, who are thought to be the cause of almost all disease and death, are killed by the Mojave. The people knew that the snake was an evil spirit. Someone set fire to the building, which flared up. The heavenly snake coiled closer for it could not escape and avoid the heat. The heat of the fire was so great that the snake burst open and was destroyed. The powers with which it was filled, the power to cause evil and death, to cure, to give songs, and many others, all these were scattered over the country and settled in the mountains, whence men obtained such powers to the present day. When looking at the descriptions of the water serpent amongst human myths, while not described as having horns or feathers, it does fly. This adds it to the archetype of the flying serpent seen in Mesoamerican, Southwestern, and even Iroquois indigenous traditions. Researchers on the subject have speculated that the water serpent came from Mesoamerica to the southwest through trade, evident in the Mogollon motifs on their pottery of the horned plumed serpent. Similarities in the stories, specifically those of the Zuni and even the Mixtec of Oaxaca, are used as evidence to support this theory. The probable bilingualism of Biman and Yuman languages in the Hohokam culture is also used to explain how the serpent motif reached these peoples. However, other researchers point to cave paintings of the horned serpent in Cochimi territory dating back to 3000 BC as evidence that this archetype originated in Baja California and spread out from there. Weather phenomena on the coast of western Mexico, in this case waterspouts, are used as evidence as well to support the origins of this myth. To this day, the peoples who inhabit the region still call this phenomenon culebra de agua, or water snake. The Kumeyaay of Baja California also call it awi shiuli, or snake's tail. The Mojave and their creation myth speak of how the water serpent's tail rattling caused rain and thunder. Another quote-unquote monster that appears in the myths of many human groups, and even in neighboring Uto Aztecan groups, is that of the water guardian, called halquitat, spiky thing in the water. There are two main forms this creature takes. The first is a giant ocean-dwelling monster that lives at the mouth of the Colorado River. In Cocopa mythology, there is no consensus amongst researchers on what its form is due to different interpretations. It is believed to be a whale, dragon, horned serpent, or snakefish, most likely being serpentine because of how its movement is described. According to legend, he created the Colorado River channel, slithering his giant body across the land, chasing the giant man-eating eagle, Ispakomai. He lost this great battle, and supposedly his skeleton can still be seen on some mountaintops in Cocopa territory. His two gonads also became the red drinkable water of the Colorado River and the blue briny water in the sea. In Quechua and Mojave mythology, Halquitat, which was translated by J.P. Harrington as crayfish, lived in the Colorado River Delta and killed the cave-dwelling cannibal giant. Lastly, it plays a large role in the Kumeyaay creation story, also said to live in the Colorado River Delta. Halquitat was sent to devour the messenger that had to kill the water serpent. The messenger went down to the river north of Yuma. Halquitat was like a big hole where the water ran in. It was a kind of monster. The messenger fell down this hole and got into the belly of Halquitat. Then he reached to the north and got a sharp blue rock. With this, he cut his way out of the monster's belly and went on south to where Maisha Awiti lived. The next iteration of this creature is the smaller water guardian, who lives in the springs they protect. It is said when they are killed or leave, they take the spring with them. To this day, the Tipai in Baja California still tell stories of this creature, a serpentine reptile with long hair and glowing eyes that stalks the body of water it inhabits, scanning for victims it can lure in with its hypnotic gaze. The Kilauea describe it as an quote-unquote alligator monster and quote-unquote keeper of the spring that lost a battle with the deity Maikuyak. What is interesting to note is that crocodiles do end up in the Baja California Peninsula on rare occasions, washed up by strong storms, with one news article reporting a carcass found on the eastern cape. Perhaps this may be the origins of this myth. The serpent water guardian also appears in the mythology of the Hopi, Opata, and other peoples as far as the Aztecs, where it is known as the Aquat. The next film will look at how these human groups, now that they have split and settled into their respective regions, then had to move again due to a fluctuating climate, by also looking at shared oral history not only amongst them, but alongside Uto Aztecan speaker myths, as it is shown the close contact both language families had with one another, as seen in the water serpent and guardian archetype, and corroborating both to paint a picture of how the modern historic territories of indigenous people in the region looks the way it does.